None of that happening.
Political theory, I began to see the flaws in libertarian thought. It got human anthropology completely wrong. Its rosy description of free market economics does
Also, what the fuck is this? Is why I call him a slop tuber in the title. Like he's just ripped the Mantis Wave. Did he just do this for this video in particular? Because he's like making fun of Mantis Wave or something? Because he's just ripped the Mantis Wave fucking logo down here, slapped his own logo on it, and then using gameplay. That's slop tube as far as I'm concerned.
does not match the historical reality of capitalism. Its moral philosophy is blind to the assumptions behind an econocentric worldview, and ultimately
Econocentric worldview. Interesting term there. We're blind to the assumptions of an econocentric worldview. I believe that's what he said. So this is just going to be, I suppose, I'm going to do a prediction right now. You guys care too much about the economy. It doesn't matter if we, degrade the economy. GDP go up. That's not all that there is in life. There are more important things, more important considerations to destroy the economy, which would be, I want him to explicitly explain what libertarian literature he read to where he didn't understand that the Austrian case is that, well, you can't the economy is not just this thing in a box that you can infringe upon at will. The economy is people acting. So to infringe upon the economy, that means you're infringing upon people attaining their values. That is the claim being made here. So I'll be interested to see. He said he was refuting them all, so I'll be interested to see the refutation of that one.
it is just as materialistic as Marxism. My political position is an idiosyncratic one called national monarchism, which I've made both a video and book about on this channel. Basically, I'm a monarchist, I'm a nationalist, and I believe in third way economics, even on the pain of being nearly against markets entirely. I've read some Marx, Lenin, and Engels. I've seen both the arguments for and against capitalism, and I think I am qualified to make a survey of the most foundational arguments that libertarians make. So without further ado, let's get started. First, let's tackle the NAP, or non-aggression principle. It means you can't step on the snake.
Okay. I hope his next sentence is a clarification of that, explaining that the non-aggression principle states that you're not allowed to initiate conflict, conflicts being mutually exclusive actions. I was mentioned directly in this video, and he says he's like super well read on the libertarian theory here. Let's see what this next sentence is, or if don't step on the snake is the limit.
There are basically three formulations of it. Hop is argumentation ethics.
No, that's not a formulation of the NEP. That's an argument for the NEP, perhaps, but it's not a formulation of the NEP.
The estoppel argument.
Nope, again, not a formulation of the non-aggression principle. The estoppel, Stephen Kinsella's theory of dialogical estoppel, it is a theory in, when it comes to the punishment theory, how do you justify retribution against people? And the idea being that, well, if you have engaged in some sort of action against somebody, then you're dialogically stopped from complaining about the retribution being done. That is, it would be a contradiction between your action and your words, right?
And Molyneux's universally preferable behavior.
Again, also not a formulation of the NEP. None of these are formulations of the NEP. Does he not know what a formulation of the NEP means? So I guess the formulation of the NEP, the definition of the NEP we have going into this video is basically don't step on the snake. And this is supposed to be a well-read guy. This is supposed to be an expert who, he said himself, he's got enough expertise to go into all this stuff. I'm not seeing it so far.
These are all actually kind of related to each other because at least two of them are attempts to solve philosophy, and they're very similar, but they are formulated in ever so slightly different ways, so I'll have to address each one individually. These are all pretty asinine, so this won't take long. Argumentation.
I wonder, there seems to be one sort of argument for the NAP by somebody he's mentioned in this video, a sort of e contrario argument, I seem to recall, which didn't go mentioned there. Perhaps it's not as asinine as these ones. Maybe he just thinks these ones are asinine, but he is willing to concede on my argument that it's correct. Or maybe he thinks these are formulations of the NEP and my one isn't a formulation of the NEP, so he's going to address it elsewhere. I'm not sure what exactly a formulation of the NEP means in this guy's terms, but we'll see.
Ethics is laid out in the following way. 1. All actions are preceded by norms. 2. Acting presupposes the norm that it is just to act in that way. 3. Engaging in argumentation establishes normatively that argumentation is a just way to resolve disputes. 4. Refuting the norm of argumentation requires argumentation. 5. Therefore, all rejection of argumentation is invalid, i.e. violence, coercion, etc. Now, an anarchist...
It's a little bit of a sloppy rundown of argumentation ethics, but I can give somebody space to have sloppy I think he used the term formulation correctly. It is the formula of argument by which you arrive at the NEP. Right, but this came right after he said, "Oh, what does the NEP mean? Oh, it means basically don't step on the snake." And there are three formulations of it. The way I was understanding that is, well, there are three different ways that they're putting it. You know, maybe one of the ways is my way, where it's talking about do not initiate conflicts, and there are other people who say it's about don't initiate force. So that could be another formulation of it that would have to be addressed separately. But so far we don't even know what the NEP is in this video. As far as this video is concerned, we have no idea what the NEP is. But yeah, on the argumentation ethics front, I can forgive some amount of sloppiness in terms of if you're giving like a brief overview of what argumentation ethics is claiming. It's not quite what he's putting down here. And if it's in a video where it's from somebody who's claiming that they've got the qualifications, they know how to talk about all these things, that's not quite sufficient.
Named ThoughtBat did an excellent video refuting argumentation ethics, which I will not reproduce here. But to sum it up, Hoppe does not defeat non-cognitivism, and the claim that acting presupposes norms violates Hume's ought gap.
I suppose then he's not going to... I'm going to address that second one. But I suppose he's not giving his full refutation of argumentation ethics here, because he's just pointing people off to ThoughtBat's video. And I'm not doing a reaction within the reaction to go one level deeper and get into ThoughtBat's video. So I suppose maybe there's something there as far as this video is concerned. But saying that it violates Hume's is-ought gap, I'm going to give you an argument, not a libertarian argument, not an objectivist argument, all companions in guilt. This shows, as far as I'm concerned, completely unanswerably, that Hume's guillotine is in fact self-defeating. So you don't even need argumentation ethics does not need a defeater for Hume's guillotine, as Hume's guillotine defeats itself. How is this so? Well, Hume is in essence saying that you can't have factual values. That is, there are no normative facts. Hume makes a little mistake, because there's not just such a thing as moral norms, there's also such a thing as epistemic norms. And in fact, Hume's guillotine is itself an epistemic norm. It's saying you should only believe in these sorts of things and not these sorts of things. It's an ought statement. So that presents a bit of a problem for Hume's guillotine. Unless he has some special carve-out for epistemic norms as against moral norms, in which case that's got to be justified, it's simply a self-defeating argument. Imagine a nested reaction video trap. A video which points at a video which points at a video, yeah. And eventually it recurses back around, so you gotta keep going through this loop forever.
The rest of the argument then falls apart, and to top it all off, there's not an obvious or necessary line through from the conclusion of argumentation ethics to private property rights.
Well, actually there is. Because from the conclusion of argumentation ethics, okay, the conclusion of argumentation ethics, what is that? It's that no possible aggressive norm could ever be justified. The only possibly defensible norms are ones that are compatible with the non-aggression principle. Seems like a pretty small little leap there to go from that to, okay, so we've got the NEP. That is basically what the NEP is claiming. Only norms which are compatible with this principle are justifiable. And then you can get from the NEP to property rights, as I've demonstrated. And of course, that this gentleman knows, because he's done all the reading, he's done all the research, he's called me out by name. So he of course knows all that stuff, but in case anybody has less expertise than Natty Bud Light, I describe this in my course. I describe how you can get from the non-aggression principle the rest of libertarianism. You don't have to commit to saying you should believe X by simply saying X is true. Well, actually you do. Unless you think epistemology is about guiding man away from knowledge, which is not, you're not talking about epistemology any longer.
Second, let's take a look at estoppel. Now, estoppel is a legal principle by which a party can dismiss a motion by the other party if it relies on a claim which that other party has rejected.
I mean, the estoppel section surely can't go a whole lot deeper, because estoppel itself rests upon argumentation ethics, and he's said that he's not going to debunk argumentation ethics in this video. I'm not sure. So 2 of his 3 formulations of the NEP, he's not addressing in this video.
In other words, if I claim that my client didn't eat a salad on Sunday, but then I make a motion that hinges on my client having eaten a salad on Sunday, the other party could object on the grounds of estoppel and dismiss my motion.
To be clear, that's the regular version of estoppel. Kinsell's version is specifically dialogical estoppel, which is different because it's not just this kind of decision by the court. It is literally a contradiction to be trying to rely on claims that are in contradiction with the actions you've taken.
Now, instead of having eaten a salad on Sunday, imagine we're talking about the use of force. The estoppel formulation of the NAP goes, if I can claim that it is just use force against the other person, I cannot then claim that it is not just for him to use force against me. If I am the state,
I mean, that's kind of, it's related. This is basically Kinsella's points about how right skepticism doesn't work. But estoppel itself doesn't actually give you the non-aggression principle, as far as I'm concerned. All it could show is, yeah, no, these are the proper punishments. But it doesn't show that you shouldn't have engaged in that action in the first place, which is what the NAP does.
Then it is clear that my monopoly on violence is invalid, and so we must have a stateless society. Now, the estoppel argument is very uncharitable regarding the state's actual justification for its violent monopoly.
Okay, he's going to give us that justification for the violent monopoly. Let's hear it.
States do not claim, without qualifications, that it is just to use violence against citizens. Instead, they usually ground their right to use force in the rules of law, and that
states don't just say that they're allowed to use force against their citizens. Instead, they ground it in the rules of law. And what are the rules of law to a positivist? It is the state saying that it's allowed to use force in these instances. It's referring back to the same thing still.
law derives its legitimacy either from a divine mandate or from popular consent.
Okay, popular consent. One quick reductio ad absurdum for Natty Bud Light. Presumably he'll watch this reaction. One quick reductio ad absurdum for you. There are 10 people on an island. 9 of those people decide they want to have sex with the remaining person. The remaining person, they say, no, I disagree. They say, well, hold on. Don't be anti-democratic here. Let's take a vote. Is that a legitimate arrangement? Does that person lose their right to their body because of popular consent? Is in anywhere else in philosophy do we go, that thing was popular, therefore it was correct? Do you perhaps know what we call that? We call it the ad populum fallacy. Argumentum ad populum. This thing is true because it is popular. That is, no, we do not accept that anywhere else in philosophy. Why are we suddenly accepting it in this specific area? This guy is literally what Dave Smith is going to become. Divine command theory plus the will of the people. Yeah, thankfully Dave Smith is bringing way more Natty Bud Lights into the movement, who I'm sure will be long-term stayers.
In other words, the state's use of force is contingent upon state legitimacy derived from popular consent or from God. Thus, the state's actual claim is not, it is just to use force against you but not against me. Rather,
it is just to use force against you rather than me because it was popular. That really cleans things up. I guess I'll have to concede there.
It is just to use force against you under the parameters of the law that you have assented to, or which all humans must assent to because it is objective. But if popular assent to the law no longer exists...
Open Objectivist is saying, by the way, this guy said he didn't watch Zulu almost at all. That's an interesting one, because why did he put me in the fucking thumbnail? Why did he mention me in the video? Are you responding to me, Natty Bud Light, or aren't you? What's going on here? Did you just want the clickbait? Like, I'm fine with clickbait. I've put plenty of people in my videos before. I put Dave Smith smack bang in the fucking center of my thumbnail on the Celebritarian video, but guess what? I actually responded to him in that video. If you're going to have a video called Every Anarcho-Capitalist Argument Debunked, and you explicitly name me and explicitly put me up in the thumbnail, I expect to see at least one of my arguments in there. Well, we'll see. I mean, we're only 5 minutes in. Maybe he's got it tucked away in there somewhere and everybody has just missed it so far.
...exists, or if I violate the divine mandate, then my use of force is unjustified. Of course, it would be absurd to expect the state to just dissolve itself.
You know, let's give him some of the same treatment. And he's like, oh, well, these arguments, they're all absurd, these arguments for the NEP. I think it's pretty absurd to say, well, what is my argument that it's fine for the state to do these things? Well, it's either going to be that God said so, which I'm not going to justify, or it's going to be that it was kind of just people wanted to do it, you know, it was kind of popular. Those don't strike me as particularly, you know, moving arguments there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe other people are like, oh, fucking well done there, buddy. You really owned libertarianism there. But I just don't see it.
If the masses turned against it. But there are real examples of states not being simple monopolies on violence. All the way from antiquity up through the feudal Middle Ages, there was a customary right of rebellion vassals held against the crown. If the crown violated customs, or acted in discordance with his divine investiture, he could legitimately be deposed by his vassals and then replaced.
Is this guy Christian? Because, I mean, it definitely wasn't Christian law in antiquity. Am I going fucking insane here? Guys, remind me. Jesus, he came about, you know, somewhere around 400 BC, right? I think that's about right. 400 before Christ. I think that's when Jesus came along. So yeah, no, I guess that's squarely in antiquity. There's going to be divine right of kings under Jesus Christ. So I guess I'll have to concede on that one too.
In ancient China, the concept of the
Ancient China. Ancient China. Big Christians they were in ancient China. Big into the Christianity.
Mandate of heaven was utilized both by the masses and by dissident nobles to justify rebellions against the emperor. If the emperor was replaced, it was customarily agreed that it was the will of heaven and thus was legitimate. And
this is entirely post hoc. This is entirely the Bronze Age type of belief that, well, those guys won, so the gods must have been on their side. Of course you'd think that if you're a fucking Bronze Age peasant. Right? And this is why the Romans, they had this whole ritual before they would invade some sort of a city or whatever. They would pray to the gods of that new city and say, hey guys, we're going to pray to you. We'll give you some, goodies and stuff like that if you come over to our side. Because they didn't know. There might be some gods out there that we're not aware of. We want to play it safe. So we're going to try and get those gods over to our side, so that they'll still have worshippers afterwards. So they still get something. And, then we can win. Right? That was just the standard sort of belief around these early people. This is not a justification of anything, though. It's not that they have worked out what the actual will of God is. It's post hoc. It's, well, we won, so it must have been within God's will. Whatever gods are of this land.
Iberia, there possibly existed the charters of Rebarbe, which stated, if he, the king, should hereafter tyrannize the kingdom against the Fueros or...
Fueros? The Fueros? Were they in Egypt? The Fueros of Egypt, I believe.
Liberties, the kingdom should be free to choose another king, even if he were a pagan. Additionally, the Magna Carta enabled barons to overrule the right of the king. There was also the Hungarian Golden Bull of 1222, which enabled noblemen to resist the king if he acted contrary to law. Finally, Thomas Aquinas more or less inverted the meaning of sedition, writing that it was really the tyrant who was seditious against the people, not the people against the tyrant. In the early modern era, it of course goes without saying that the United States was founded, to a certain extent, upon a right of...
Was this really the historical analysis that convinced him that the NAP was false? He looked back in history and said, well, actually there was some sort of a bronze bull in Hungary, and, well, I guess the NAP's false now. Is this the caliber of argument? And this guy was deep into libertarianism. He knew all his stuff, but he just hadn't considered the bronze bull yet.
Rebellion. As Thomas Jefferson said, the tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. We might also reference Jean-Jacques Rousseau's proposition that the people have the right to depose an unworthy government by withdrawing their consent.
What is the standard of unworthiness? Like, what explicitly is the standard of unworthiness? Because he says, well, it's a divine right or popularity. Are those one and the same always? So that's curious. But what specifically is the divine law on this matter? Like, what specifically are the standards by which you can decide, oh, well, this one's tyrannical, so we can go against it? If not the NEP, because clearly it's not the NEP. But what specifically is it? I'm not sure. Bunny Boy for 100 kroner, saying debunked, #owning libertarianism. Indeed. Well, thank you very much for the money.
We can clearly see that the estoppel argument is based on an
And that was about estoppel, by the way. All of this nonsense that was his debunking of estoppel. I completely forgot about that. Yes, what an astounding argument against Kinsella. I'm going to have to send that one to Kinsella, get him to add some errata in his papers there. In this theory of dialogical estoppel, it has been brought to my attention I did not consider the bronze bull, so I withdraw my entire argument. Kinsella's, we gotta inform him about this one.
Simplified straw man of the actual basis for the state's monopoly on violence, which, as we can see, is...
Simplified straw man. Now that's an interesting term to use there. I would posit that it's a simplified straw man of estoppel, the way you've described it, and the way you've tried to pretend that this is some root argument for the NEP, rather than being what it's always been presented as, which is an argument for the justice of retribution, the eye for an eye. I'd say that's a pretty big simplified straw man there. You've simplified it a bunch, and you've strawmanned it a bunch. I think that's fair.
Usually, at least in theory, delimited by popular consent. If we can declare anything to be unjust, then it would be an explicit tyranny, not the state itself. Lastly, we must confront Stefan Molyneux's UPB. Again, I won't spend much time on it. You can watch Rationality Rules' video on UPB if you want to
I don't really care about UPB at all. So, maybe this guy's correct about that.
Deep dive. But the most serious problem is that Molyneux presupposes the question of universally preferable behavior in the definition of universally preferable behavior. It's a circular argument. He also, like Hoppe, violates the Izot gap for basically the same reason.
You know what else violates the Izot gap? The argument that there is an Izot gap.
It shouldn't surprise you that no philosopher who is actually worth his salt hasn't found a way to conclude that his, and only his, moral argument is correct.
Pardon me. UPB made me think of the PEB. It's a very similar acronyms there.
Owen has solved philosophy, and Molyneux's arrogant attempt is the most laughable.
Surely every philosopher thinks they've at least solved the areas in philosophy that they're making claims about. How is it arrogant when it comes to us, suddenly? This guy thinks he's solved the philosophy on this front. Because guys, I don't know if you know about this. There's actually this bronze bull in Hungary, and so therefore Aristotle's false. So he's solved the philosophy. I'll concede to that. He's solved the philosophy as far as the bronze bull is concerned. But why is it suddenly like it's only arrogant when it comes to us? Everybody else is able to claim that they solve philosophy. Hegelians are allowed to claim that. Marxist-Leninists are allowed to claim that. It's only us who aren't allowed to claim that. It's curious there, isn't it?
Of all of them. Now let's go on to the next one, which is voluntary employment, an important cornerstone of anarcho-capitalist theory.
Yeah, so we're just not going to actually receive any sort of like a treatment of what the NEP actually is. He's just moving on. He's just moving on. I thought maybe he was just very idiosyncratic with his editing style, and after he'd explained all that, he was going to say, and here's what the NEP is, but it's looking less and less likely as time goes on.